He says that in case of medical impediment, he has already signed his resignation and has given it to one of the Vatican cardinals.
The world has been taken aback by Pope Francis's decision to officially step down from his position, which marks the end of an era for the Catholic Church. But what is even more shocking is the fact that Cardinal Luis Antonio Tagle has taken his place as the new leader. Tagle's ascent to the papacy is anything but straightforward, despite the fact that he is praised as a compassionate reformer and is at the same time surrounded by controversy. Tagle, who is well known for his close ties to Francis, his progressive ideals, and his stance on China, is currently confronted with a church that is divided against tradition and change. Now, why did Pope Francis have such a high level of confidence in Tagle? And is it possible for him to bring together a church that is in disarray, a transition that is historically significant? Over the course of the past 10 years, Pope Francis has been a guiding light for transformation, causing centuries-old customs to be shaken up and putting the spotlight on kindness, inclusion, and injustice. However, those who are close to him are now expressing something that is unexpected. It appears that he has accomplished his goal. Yes, finish the job. According to him, the time has come for a new person to take the helm of the church and steer it into the future. According to reports, Pope Francis has reportedly found a sense of peace with this decision with the help of his closest advisors who have been having quiet conversations behind closed doors. Let's not try to gloss over the truth. His tenure as Pope has not exactly been without its challenges. The challenges have been enormous, ranging from addressing issues that have persisted for a long time within the Church to navigating crises on a global scale. On the other hand, despite the weight of everything, his faith in the Church's capacity to develop and adapt in order to fulfill the requirements of its adherents in a world that is constantly shifting has never wavered. A legacy like that is something to be celebrated. The situation is about to take a turn that is truly fascinating at this point. There is a rumor going around the Vatican that Pope Francis may have already selected the individual he would like to succeed him. The election of a new pope is a sacred and confidential process that takes place within a conclave of cardinals, according to the technical definition. But let's be honest, what kind of influence does a departing pope have? That's not a trivial matter. Are you curious about the identity of this possible new leader? As far as I know, that is still a secret. Someone who shares Francis's vision for a church that is more inclusive, more socially conscious, and more in tune with the pulse of the modern world is rumored to exist, according to those who are connected to the discussion. Give it some thought. The kind of leader who doesn't just carry the torch, but also reignites it, blazing a path into a future that feels more connected and compassionate than it ever has before. To put it simply, the timing of this event could not be more intriguing. So, here's why. This momentous decision was made during the Jubilee of Hope, which was a worldwide celebration that Francis initiated on the evening of Christmas Eve in the year 2024. A celebration that is intended to serve as a catalyst for revitalization, introspection, and of course, hope for a world that is navigating enormous challenges. At this very moment, millions of people are being encouraged to look forward to a more promising future. Moreover, it is now possible that it will also serve as the final chapter of Pope Francis's transformative papacy, which is totally unexpected. The timing of this moment is not the only thing that makes it remarkable. The man himself is what makes it so remarkable. People who are close to Pope Francis have described him as being completely content with the legacy he has left behind. This is a leader who has courageously opened dialogues on topics that were once considered untouchable within the Church, who has championed the fight against climate change, and who has driven efforts to reform the financial practices of the Vatican. While doing so, he has not only led, but reimagined what it means to be a leader. This is a bold move, one that will have repercussions throughout the course of history. There is, however, the catch to consider. Despite the fact that he is stepping down, Pope Francis is aware that there is still a great deal of work to be done. It is true that the change in leadership at the Vatican is anything but straightforward. It is a procedure that is steeped in tradition and consists of intricate steps that it is imperative to adhere to. In the event that the rumors are accurate, Pope Francis may be following in the footsteps of Pope Benedict XVI by choosing to abdicate rather than maintain his position until the end of his life. In the short history of the modern world, this would be only the second time that the Pope has resigned. Take some time to process that information. Within the span of just 10 years, centuries of precedent were altered. it is becoming increasingly audible within Vatican City that there is a possibility of a change occurring. Not only is there a palpable sense of anticipation, but there is also a sense of uncertainty around. Taking everything into consideration, this is not just about a change in leadership. The future of the Church is at stake here. In what ways will this transition affect the organization's stance on some of the most pressing issues of our time, such as the role of women in the inclusion of LGBTQ Catholics and the ongoing urgent need to address clerical abuse? These are crucial forks in the road, and whoever steps into Francis's shoes will not only be responsible for carrying forward his vision, but they will also be required to define their own path in a world that is constantly evolving. On the other hand, when we speak of Pope Francis, we are not simply referring to a leader of the Catholic Church. Here we are discussing a world-renowned figure. Because he places such a strong emphasis on issues of social justice, environmental stewardship, and interfaith dialogue, he has become a transformative figure not only for the context of the Church, but for the entire world. As the rumors about his possible departure continue to spread, there is one thing that can be said with absolute certainty. In political arenas, social movements, and spiritual communities all over the world, the effects of the ripples will be felt as far and wide as possible. In the meantime, there is a low-key buzz that can be heard throughout the Vatican. It has been reported that preparations are currently being made for what has the potential to be one of the most historic announcements in recent history. There are 1.3 billion Catholics around the world, and the most important question is how Pope Francis will communicate his decision to them. The question is, what will this moment of farewell look like? Whoever decides to follow in his footsteps will be confronted with a formidable obstacle. The subsequent leader will inherit a church that is poised at a critical crossroads, navigating the same delicate balance that defined Pope Francis's time, which is the tension between honoring tradition and embracing progress. However, as the Church stands at this critical juncture, it appears that the selection of the next pope may already be taking shape within the sacred traditions of the conclave, which is the successor to the Pope. Once Pope Francis has officially stepped down from his position, the College of Cardinals, which is comprised of a group of highly influential leaders, will convene in the Sistine Chapel for a conclave in order to make their selection for the next pope. The method is steeped in history and shrouded in secrecy, and it is deeply rooted in tradition. However, there is no denying that the influence of Pope Francis will continue to extend into that room. In the course of his tenure, he made a number of decisions, and he elevated a number of cardinals, all of which point to the kind of leader he hopes will ensure that his vision is carried forward. Cardinal Luis Antonio Tagle is one of the names that stands out among the whispered names because of the hope and promise that he possesses. The charismatic leader, Cardinal Tagle, who was born in the Philippines, is more than just a charismatic leader. In every way, he embodies everything that Pope Francis has been a champion of. Tagle, who is well known for his profound compassion and theological brilliance, has spent years advocating for the benefit of the underprivileged and the marginalized, thereby echoing the core of Francis's message. It is clear that he is more than just a leader. Perhaps most importantly, he is a voice for those who are in the greatest need of it. He is a bridge builder, a unifier, and a united front. However, Cardinal Tagle's vision is not the only thing that truly distinguishes him from others. Specifically, it is his capacity to translate that vision into actionable steps, thereby influencing people's lives all over the world in ways that are not only useful, but also profoundly motivating. Consider, for instance, the work that he has done in sub-Saharan Africa. It was not enough for Tagle to simply offer words of encouragement in a region where a significant number of Catholics are experiencing unimaginable economic hardships. Solutions were offered by him. The Vatican formed partnerships with the communities in which it operated in order to provide financial support for educational and vocational training programs. His focus was on developing long-term opportunities that would help families work their way out of poverty while simultaneously strengthening their faith. Through his initiatives, Cardinal Tagle provided individuals with the resources necessary to make changes in their lives, while simultaneously reminding them of the Church's profound commitment to their spiritual and material well-being. In addition, Africa is only a single piece of the puzzle. Tagle intervened with a bold vision for peace in Myanmar, a country that was torn apart by political and ethnic conflict. Myanmar is located in the middle of the continent. In this context, he advocated for reconciliation, fully aware that the process of healing encompassed more than simply mending political divides. It was about bringing people of different faiths together. Tagle established a forum for conversation by bringing together leaders from the Buddhist and Catholic communities. This helped to cultivate mutual understanding and unity in a region that was in dire need of optimism. Tagle's conviction that the Church possesses the power to act as a catalyst for peace and healing became a guiding light for communities that were struggling to move beyond their differences. On the other hand, Cardinal Tagle's dedication to enculturation is where the true brilliance of his leadership can be found. Right? What exactly does that imply? To put it another way, it is the concept that the Church does not merely engage in preaching to communities. They are listened to, their cultures are adapted to, and their distinctive cultures are celebrated. Tagle, much like in Africa and Asia, has been a strong advocate for the incorporation of indigenous styles of music, art, and language into the liturgical practices of the Catholic Church. In addition, here is the splendor of it. There is more to it than just a nod to diversity. A celebration of it is being held. From Tagle's perspective, the Church is not merely a phenomenon that exists within various cultures. They have ownership of it. It becomes an integral part of their narrative, including their struggles and their victories. Through the use of this approach, local communities are given the ability to express their faith in ways that are genuine and significant, thereby establishing a connection that goes beyond tradition and has a considerable impact. However, this is not the end of his sphere of influence. However, Cardinal Tagle is also a global force for compassion and action, particularly when it comes to some of the most vulnerable populations in the world. Tagle, in his capacity as president of Caritas Internationalis, was the driving force behind the Share the Journey campaign, which was a worldwide initiative that raised awareness about the predicament of refugees and migrants globally. But let me tell you something. In his speech, Tagle did not merely discuss the dignity of people who had been displaced from a distance. It was he who appeared. During his time in the refugee camps of Lebanon and Jordan, Tagle had the opportunity to meet people in person and listen to their stories of hardships, fears, and hopes. The compassion he showed was not merely genuine, it was in operation. Tagle brought to the attention of the world the fact that these are not merely random statistics by utilizing his platform to amplify their voices. These are people who have stories that need to be heard, and they are human beings. His approach to broader social justice issues is driven by the same sense of urgency and compassion that he brings to his work. According to him, issues such as climate change, poverty, and migration are not merely theoretical concerns. These challenges are systemic in nature, and the Church needs to confront them in a bold and tangible manner. Tagle has, through his work, urged the Vatican to collaborate with non-religious organizations and to take concrete steps toward achieving its goals. What is his perspective? A congregation that not only preaches about the importance of justice, but also works actively to bring about its creation, standing in solidarity with the international community. So, what is it about Cardinal Luis Antonio Tagle that makes him such an influential figure in the Church around the world? He is not only charismatic or compassionate, he also has a connection to Pope Francis, which is a significant factor. Over the course of their relationship, Francis and Tagle have shared more than just a vision for a church that is compassionate and welcoming to all. Their relationship has been built on trust, collaboration, and a shared mission to bring Catholic teachings to the world in a way that truly resonates with people all over the world. During the year 2019, Pope Francis made a courageous decision by appointing Tagle to the position of head of the Congregation for the Evangelization of Peoples. This position places Tagle at the very center of the mission work that the Church is engaged in. From this position, Tagle is in charge of overseeing the efforts that are being made to disseminate Catholic teachings all over the world, particularly in regions where the Church is expanding at the fastest rate. Of course, that is not all. Tagle has further demonstrated his alignment with Francis's vision of service, compassion, and inclusion through his leadership of Caritas Internationalis, the humanitarian arm of the Catholic Church. As a result of the close relationship that exists between Francis and Tagle, many people believe that Tagle is the most natural candidate to succeed Francis as Pope. And this is not just due to the fact that he has a resume. It is also due to the idea that he stands for. In the same way that Francis does, Tagle exudes humility, warmth, and the ability to connect with regular people. Tagle exemplifies the approachable and grounded demeanor that has won the hearts of millions of people all over the world. This is true whether he is discussing difficult theological questions or simply sharing a meal with refugees. The rise of Tagle, however, has not been a coincidence. This is the result of a clear alignment with the values that Francis has championed throughout his entire pontificate. These values include compassion, inclusion, and a steadfast commitment to addressing global challenges such as poverty, migration, and climate change. For a period of time, it appeared as though Tagle would eventually join the Catholic Church. In the eyes of many people, he was the most formidable competitor due to the fact that Francis had placed his trust in him and his growing influence. Not only was he praised for his theological brilliance, but also for his remarkable ability to maintain a deep connection with ordinary people. This is a quality that is increasingly considered to be essential for the leadership of modern churches. However, now that Cardinal Tagle is the center of attention, the path that lies ahead is not without its many obstacles. Behind the admiration lies a complex web of problems that have the potential to rewrite his legacy and put to the test whether or not he is truly prepared to steer the church through the most difficult period in its history. Is Tagle prepared to take the helm of the church? There is a possibility that Cardinal Luis Antonio Tagle is currently in the lead for the position of Pope, but it is not at all certain that he will be able to achieve this position. It is possible that his close association with Pope Francis will present its own set of challenges, despite the fact that his compassionate leadership and global appeal have earned him widespread admiration. In order for Tagle to achieve his goals, he will have to demonstrate to the world that he is more than just an Asian Francis and establish a distinct identity in the eyes of the College of Cardinal Players. On the other hand, there are three significant factors that could hurt his chances. Other candidates, criticism of his domestic record, and his reluctance to speak out more openly in China are all factors that could affect his chances of winning the election. It is important to note that Tagle is up against fierce competition from other candidates, particularly Cardinal William Goh, who is from Singapore. As is the case with Tagle, Goh possesses the advantage of being both Anglophone and from Asia, qualities that are congruent with the growing emphasis that the Church is placing on regions that are not located in Europe. On the other hand, Goh is also considered to be someone who is capable of bridging the gap between the conservative factions within the Church. This is a quality that Tagle, who is considered to be firmly within the progressive camp, may have difficulty replicating. Second, Tagle's progressive reputation is both his greatest asset and a potential liability. Tagle's reputation is both progressive and progressive. Throughout his career, he has been a staunch advocate for the importance of hospitality within the Church, challenging harsh rhetoric and advocating for inclusivity, particularly with regard to LGBTQ Catholics. Over the course of the most recent Lambeth Conference, Tagle emphasized the perils of permitting ethnic and cultural issues to undermine the mission of the Church, while also criticizing populist tendencies that distort the meaning of unity. Although these remarks have struck a chord with progressive Catholics, they run the risk of alienating members of the hierarchy who adhere to more traditional beliefs. Last but not least, Tagle's perceived reluctance to take a more forceful stance on issues that are associated with China has been the subject of criticism. Some people believe that Tagle's relative silence on this contentious issue could be a liability for the Church, given that it is currently navigating a delicate relationship with Beijing. This is especially true when considering the fact that other candidates may be more willing to address these complexities head-on. Cardinal Luis Antonio Tagle's path to the papacy is made even more complicated by the striking parallels he draws between his rhetoric and that of Pope Francis, as well as the mounting criticism of his record that he has received both domestically and internationally. In spite of the fact that these aspects demonstrate that he is in agreement with the current Pope's vision, they also bring up significant concerns regarding his leadership style and his independence, both of which have the potential to be instrumental in the ultimate decision that the conclave makes. The rhetoric of Tagle frequently aligns with that of Pope Francis, particularly with regard to migration and populism. In his speech upon his return from Kazakhstan, Pope Francis, for example, emphasized the significance of migration as a means of enhancing the intellectual and cultural fabric of the Western world. In addition to advocating for the acceptance of migrants, he called for policies that would support their integration. In a similar vein, Tagle has emphasized the significance of hospitality and inclusivity, as well as cautioned against populist attitudes that put the spiritual unity of the Church in jeopardy. However, despite the fact that these shared ideals resonate with progressives, They also tether Tagle closely to Francis's legacy, which may alienate factions within the Church that are looking for a leader who has a distinct and independent voice. Compounding this difficulty is the criticism that has been leveled against Tagle's domestic record as Archbishop of Manila, which further casts doubt on his candidacy. He was accused of entangling the Church in partisan politics by the Manila Standard, particularly because of his outspoken criticism of Rodrigo Duterte, who had previously served as president of the Philippines. Some people believe that Tagle's involvement went too far and violated the constitutional law that states that there should be a separation of church and state. Luis Birogo asserts that Tagle allowed homilies to be delivered that contained political rhetoric that was intended to divide people for the purpose of discrediting the administration of Duterte and rallying opposition among Catholics. Because of these actions, concerns have been raised about his capacity to remain impartial and to concentrate on spiritual leadership rather than political leadership, both of which are qualities that many people consider to be essential for the next pope. In addition, Tagle has been subjected to criticism following allegations that he failed to hold clerics accountable for misconduct that occurred during his tenure. A number of people have begun to question his ability to maintain discipline within the Church as a result of this perceived leniency. However, the most difficult test of Tagle's leadership capabilities is likely to be found outside of the Church's internal affairs. In regard to China, this is his calculated stance. Tagle failed to comment on China. The position that Tagle takes on China continues to be a contentious issue on the international stage. Tagle has, for the most part, echoed the cautious approach taken by the Vatican, avoiding open criticism of Beijing. This is because Pope Francis is continuing to pursue a controversial agreement with the Chinese Communist Party. In spite of the fact that this brings him in line with Francis's policies, it runs the risk of associating him with the growing criticism of the Vatican's dealings with the CCP, particularly from those who believe the Church is compromising its values. Given the prominent roles that Tagle plays within the Vatican, it is especially striking that he has remained silent on this matter. He holds a significant amount of authority on matters pertaining to the global church outreach because he was the prefect of the Congregation for the Evangelization of Peoples, and is now the pro-prefect of the Dicastery for Evangelization, which is the successor to the Congregation. Given his background and the ongoing territorial disputes between the Philippines and China, his reluctance to address the controversial Vatican-China deal has not gone unnoticed. This is especially true when taking into consideration his background. In the context of the papacy, this perceived lack of activity raises questions about his willingness to confront politically sensitive issues, which is a quality that it is possible that some people will consider to be a liability. During the period of time that the Vatican and China were in the process of negotiating the Vatican-China Agreement, Tagle, who served as the Dicastery for Evangelization from 2019 to 2022, was an instrumental figure. Despite the fact that Tagle was not directly involved in the process of crafting the deal, the dicastery maintained a certain degree of responsibility for monitoring the welfare of Chinese Christians throughout this period. One more layer of complexity is added to his silence on the matter by the fact that he is in close proximity to the discussions, in addition to the fact that he has a partial Chinese heritage. As a result of this restraint, many observers have become more concerned about whether or not he would be able to effectively address geopolitical issues that are comparable to those that Pope has addressed. During this crucial juncture, Tagle maintains his silence. It was originally scheduled to begin on September 19th, but the trial of Cardinal Joseph Zen, who is known for his outspoken opposition to the Vatican-China Agreement, was ultimately postponed. While this was going on, Pope Francis, who has taken a more lenient stance toward China, reportedly made an attempt to meet with Chinese President Xi Jinping during his trip to Kazakhstan. However, his request was denied. Francis has framed his approach as the path of dialogue, while at the same time appearing to downplay Zen's criticism. He has stated that the elderly cardinal says what he feels, while acknowledging that there are limitations to both of these statements. The fact that Tagle is in agreement with this cautious Vatican strategy, in contrast to the fact that he has not publicly criticized the Vatican, could be considered a weakness. Tagle runs the risk of being perceived as complicit in a policy that some people believe undermines the moral authority of the Church, because he has not distanced himself from the contentious agreement. This is especially true at a time when prominent figures, such as Cardinal Gerhard Müller, have publicly expressed their dismay at the Vatican's perceived silence in Zen's unfair trial. The most difficult obstacle that Cardinal Luis Antonio Tagle may have to overcome is the perception that he is too closely connected to the legacy of Pope Francis. His critics argue that he is not as effective as some of his peers in bridging divides within the Church, particularly Singaporean Cardinal William Goh, who shares many of Tagle's advantages while being seen as more adept at appealing to conservative factions. Tagle's popularity, charisma, and extensive experience have positioned him as a leading contender for the papacy. However, his critics argue that he is not as effective as some of his peers. The College of Cardinals is not likely to be significantly impacted by the criticisms that have been leveled against Tagle, particularly those that pertain to his domestic record in the Philippines. These criticisms are largely an issue of the past. These issues, despite the fact that they are being debated, might ultimately have a minimal impact on his candidacy. However, his reluctance to speak openly about the Vatican-China deal presents a more pressing concern, particularly in light of the fact that the Church continues to be scrutinized for the way it handles relations with Beijing. Tagle is faced with a challenge as well as an opportunity as a result of his silence, which, in conjunction with his perceived inability to reach across ideological aisles, presents him with both. By addressing these areas, he has the opportunity to demonstrate that he is not merely an Asian Francis, but rather a leader who possesses a unique vision and the ability to bring together a diverse church in the midst of global challenges. Tagle has the potential to revitalize his candidacy and solidify his position as a serious contender for the papacy if he is able to take courageous steps to reconcile these criticisms. These steps include engaging with critics, articulating a clear stance on contentious issues such as China, and demonstrating an ability to navigate the internal divides that exist within the Church. The chance to triumph over these obstacles is still firmly in his possession throughout this entire process. The Roman Catholic Church is currently at a pivotal juncture. As a result of Pope Francis's resignation and Cardinal Luis Tagle's elevation to the position of cardinal, the future has never felt either more uncertain or more confident. What are your thoughts on this significant change in the past? Is Tagle capable of meeting the challenges that lie ahead, or does his history raise an excessive amount of questions? Send us your feedback in the comments section below, and don't forget to give this post a like, share it with your friends, and subscribe to receive further updates on this momentous occasion in the history of the Church. The narrative is just getting started, and you won't want to miss out on what it has in store for you.